Bob Huggins is on his way out the door as West Virginia's men's head basketball head coach. Why does that matter here in June? Well, now there's a 30-day window from the NCAA where players at West Virginia have the option to enter the transfer portal if they so choose. Is there an interesting target on the Mountaineers for the Blue Devils? We discuss on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, and I hope that you're doing well here on today's show. We've got a lot planned for you that we want to discuss on the program. Before we get into anything, however, I would love for you to go ahead and subscribe to this podcast for free wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure you watch our show daily on YouTube. Check us out. Hit that subscribe button, as your support means the absolute world to us. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. A fun hypothetical in the world of Duke men's basketball regarding the transfer portal. And we're going to talk about that on today's show alongside my good pal, Kevin Connelly, the site expert from Ball Durham. Kevin, I hope you're doing well today, man. How are you?
I am, JJ. How are you?
I can't complain, man. Great to be with you. Great time of year. A few days shy of the NBA draft, and we're going to have plenty of coverage for that throughout the week. But I've got a good hypothetical here that I wanted to discuss. We teased it there a little bit in the open, but for those unaware, over the weekend, West Virginia makes a change in leadership with their men's basketball program. For the longest time, you could go all the way back to that 2010 Final Four game between the Duke Blue Devils, led by Jon Scheyer, and West Virginia, led by head coach Bob Huggins. Well, Bob Huggins has been, he's resigned. He's stepping away from that job after a couple of situations have happened here in the past few months. So he's out the door. And the NCAA now has given a 30-day window to players at West Virginia to go into the portal if they so choose and be eligible to play this upcoming season. There's a particular target that I think would make this Duke team pretty spectacular, and that's Jesse Edwards, who played for Syracuse this past season. He transferred back in April to West Virginia. And so, Kevin, today, let's kind of just discuss what if, how awesome would this scenario be? Would he be able to fit? That sort of thing. So big picture, your reaction sort of to all the chaos that's unfolded in Morgantown the last little bit.
Yeah, first of all, it's just a sad situation that they have going on there in West Virginia. I mean, Bob Huggins, one of the legendary coaches in college basketball, and just to see basically in this 6-week period, his career kind of go down the drain. It's tough to see. But yeah, like you said, I mean, we talked about basically since April that this team, once Derek Lively went into the NBA draft, that they need a rim protecting, paint dominant center. Ernest Udeh Jr. didn't happen. A couple of other guys that Duke had been linked to, the relationship really never grew much more. Felt like they were all in on Ernest Udeh Jr., and obviously that didn't happen due to a couple of reasons. So now you look to this situation at West Virginia, and Jesse Edwards, Duke fans would imagine they're very familiar with him, playing him a couple of times a year at Syracuse, double-digit or double-double average at Syracuse, just over 14 points and 10 rebounds per game. Also average about just under 3 blocks per game as well. So just his body type, his frame, his game, it feels like it's almost tailor-made for this Duke basketball program. Now, he hasn't gone back into the transfer portal yet. They have 30 days from, I believe, Saturday. I think it was from Saturday was when he officially, Bob Huggins officially put his resignation in. So it's 30 days from, I got my calendar behind me here, from June 17th. So 30 days from then, and players will still be eligible for this upcoming season. So feels like right now, first of all, the ball's in Jesse Edwards' court to see what's going to happen. I guess I haven't seen really any players go into the transfer portal yet from West Virginia. I know I saw a couple of reports saying upwards of 8, 9, 10 guys might enter the transfer portal, but I guess they're still wait and see with team meetings and what they're going to do for the team's next head coach. But yeah, it's certainly going to be something to monitor going forward to see if this Duke roster can finally be filled out with that true paint presence, rim protector inside.
Yeah, what we do know is, as you mentioned, this 30-day window is in place, and Jesse Edwards is not in the transfer portal yet. Maybe he's going to stay committed to West Virginia after making the shift over from Syracuse. But look, we're all about finding a home for this 13th scholarship with the Duke men's basketball team this upcoming season. Also, it's a great talking point, and I'd love for people to sound off down below or on Twitter with us. Let us know what you think about the potential fit. Is this a dream scenario for Jesse Edwards to end up transferring to Duke should he enter the NCAA transfer portal? We continue our conversation with Kevin Connelly after our first time out here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. A lot of big things happening in the major leagues this time of year. And also, don't forget about the NBA draft coming up on Thursday. A lot of big topics there. Who will be the #1 pick? Who is your favorite team going to draft, and more? You can find all the odds and so much more at FanDuel. Again, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up for your no-sweat first bet. FanDuel is an official partner of Major League Baseball, as we will continue our program here with our good pal Kevin Connelly on Locked On Blue Devils. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Ball Durham. Give me a plug for Ball Durham, if you will, Kevin.
Well, Ball Durham, you can follow us on Twitter at @ball_Durham. You could read us every day at balldurham.com. And we got a lot of content. We talked about NBA draft, or we're going to talk about some NBA draft stuff that we're going to be all over. Draft on Thursday night. And then we got a lot of recruiting stuff this time of year, a lot of EYBL circuits. Any late shakeups in the transfer portal, we'll be all over that as well. So a lot of recruiting and a lot of looking ahead to this upcoming season for Duke, and also a couple of guys leaving Duke and heading to the NBA as well. So we still got all the coverage you need over there at balldurham.com.
Which we're all for. Certainly love all of the content this time of year, and make sure you go check out your website with the great stuff you've got there. Speaking of content, let's continue talking about our topic here today on the program. West Virginia basketball announces a change in leadership for their men's basketball program, as a couple of players now could enter, all the players could enter the transfer portal if they so choose, with the 30-day window to be eligible immediately. And with that in mind, a couple of players that are rumored possibly to be heading elsewhere would be Jesse Edwards, who came from Syracuse initially, and then also Kirk Krisha was an impressive guard for the Arizona Wildcats the past few seasons. He ended up with the Mountaineers. What we know in the last 48, 72 hours is that a couple of West Virginia basketball alums, including Joe Mazzulla, the current Boston Celtics head coach, and a player who went against Duke on that 2010 Final Four team, has been having calls and Zoom meetings with the current players, asking that they stay committed to the program. They've got sort of a close-knit family there, as most basketball programs do, of alums and current players, trying to keep those guys committed on campus. And Kevin, I don't think that anybody on that West Virginia roster, Jesse Edwards included, thought that they would be in this position when he made that decision back in mid-April to leave a home in Syracuse, which he had played at for several years. This isn't like Ernest Udeh Jr., who only had one season of college basketball under his belt. Jesse Edwards has been around the block. He's really good down on the block. But, I don't think he envisioned this scenario playing out just 2 months into his time there in Morgantown.
Yeah, and let's get one thing clear. Duke didn't have any interest in him. They didn't really go after him once he initially entered the transfer portal out of Syracuse and ended up at West Virginia. So it'd be interesting to see if he does go back into the transfer portal, if Duke does show some interest this time. And you also have to imagine, like, a lot of these rosters for various teams are set. So, like, everyone has their full allotment of scholarships. For Duke, they still have one available. So you'd think they could be one of the teams interested should he go back into the transfer portal. But, yeah, you mentioned Joe Mazzulla has been on these Zooms with the West Virginia team, trying to keep them together, trying to figure out what the Mountaineer program is going to do moving forward. I know one name that has been floated out there, Gerard Calhoun, the head coach at Youngstown State. He was on staff at West Virginia, I believe, as well with Joe Mazzulla once he got into coaching. So that's a name that I think has been floated out there. So if you're West Virginia, you kind of have to move quickly now if you're going to go that route and promoting another head coach from Youngstown State to your head coach, or promoting one of your assistants to take over Bob Huggins' role. But things have to unfold quickly here for the Mountaineers because, like you said, players need to know within that 30-day window what they're going to do.
Yeah, just as quickly as players might want to make a decision, West Virginia needs to be as quick making their decision and who's going to be that next head coach. And there's been great reporting done by some of the Titans in the college basketball recruiting world saying that West Virginia's not looking for an interim head coach. Let's make that clear. They want to make a permanent hire, which is a little difficult this time of year, this late into the season. They understand it could mean sacrificing a productive basketball season coming up in 2023, 2024. But let's make the hire right this time around, which makes things a little bit more difficult. So if those players decide to transfer, there's a big player that played for Syracuse this past season in Jesse Edwards, who led the ACC in block shots, 0.4 block shots ahead of Derek Lively, the second of Duke, in terms of leading the conference in that category. Duke is needing a rim protector. Why would this fit, Kevin? And then we'll get to possibly why this wouldn't work for Duke. Why would this work should Jesse Edwards, again, continuing out this dream scenario?
Well, I think why would it would work is you see those two numbers right there, 10.3 rebounds per game and 2.7 blocks per game. That's why it would work. Now, also, it would work that 14.5 points per game. Duke didn't really have a low post scorer last year. Now, Kyle Filipowski certainly could be that this year. You wouldn't want to rely on Ryan Young. And then we talked about the offensive struggles of Derek Lively. So it would give Duke a scoring post presence. It would obviously give them a big rebounding threat and a big block threat as well. Now, you have to take into effect a little bit of the 2-3 zone where Jesse Edwards anchored in the middle contributed to some of those numbers instead of playing a man-to-man. That's what Syracuse didn't do under Jim Boeheim. So those numbers, specifically the rebounds, might be a little bit inflated just because he's right under the basket for every missed shot, and teams shoot a lot of threes against that 2-3 zone of Syracuse. So those numbers might be inflated just a little bit, but no, you would still think that if Duke was interested and Jesse Edwards was interested, that Jon Scheyer would definitely make this work, and he would be welcomed with open arms to try and provide that anchor inside the Duke defense.
Yeah, let's break down those numbers even further. Before we even get to why this wouldn't work, do want to put some context behind some of these numbers, but also give props where props is certainly deserved. So for those listening to us, Jesse Edwards, 32 games played at Syracuse, over 30 minutes per contest playing for the Orange this past season, 14.5 points per game, 10.3 rebounds per game, 2.7 block shots per game, shooting nearly 60% from the floor, and a 73% free throw shooter. Pretty impressive numbers all in all when you look at those stats for Jesse Edwards. Wouldn't you say, Kevin?
Yeah, especially when you look at the free throw numbers. I mean, for a guy that's 6'11", you see big guys sometimes struggle to shoot free throws, and he took 140 on the season and made 102. So the free throw numbers really stand out to me. And one thing I should mention about the rebounding numbers, he pulled down 330 rebounds in total this year. 101 of them came on the offensive side of the ball. So that's not a detriment of the 2-3 zone. He is a good rebounder, although maybe those defensive rebounds might be a little bit inflated because of that zone. The offensive rebounding numbers sure aren't, with over 100 offensive rebounds on the season.
I like the fit. And again, we can't, we're going to let people know this is a dream scenario that you need one more scholarship left for Duke. Currently on the roster, they've got 12. You get 13 going into the 2023-2024 season. He is not in the transfer portal just yet, but man, this would be an absolute dream scenario. So now we flip the question around. Given those 12 scholarship guys currently on the roster for Duke, why wouldn't this work?
Well, you look at why wouldn't it work, and you think once Duke knew they weren't getting Ernest Udeh Jr., now granted there weren't a lot of options available, but they didn't go out pressing for someone to fill that role, and that makes you think maybe Jon Scheyer, is comfortable with Ryan Young and Christian Reeves and Kyle Filipowski all playing the 5. I think that's something you certainly have to think about. Now, if you can get a proven big man like Jesse Edwards, maybe that changes. Now, Ernest Uday Jr. certainly wasn't proven in his 1 year at Kansas, but the potential was obviously there, and he was young and raw enough that the coaching staff thought they could develop him into a quality center. But I mean, maybe Jon Scheyer is ready to roll with that trio of Filipowski, Young, and Reeves as his centers this year.
Yeah, I think that could be a case why, because you've just got this kind of state of continuity with big guys coming back in the middle of your defense there for Duke, and asking someone else to come in who is more of a large volume player, right? So many people love those advanced stats. The usage rate of somebody like Jesse Edwards is much higher than some of the other targets that we had discussed. Not only were we talking about Ernest Uday Jr., but there was Aziz Bandigo conversations that we were having in the transfer portal. So in so many ways, Kevin, it almost feels as though maybe it is okay if Duke just does proceed forward with those 12 scholarship players. Right? You don't have to find everybody to give these scholarships to, right? You are allowed to give scholarships to your walk-on players, and certainly walk-ons mean so much to that Duke program. So that is certainly an option and a possibility for Jon Scheyer and his staff to do. So again, there are a couple of reasons why this wouldn't work. One, Jesse Edwards hasn't officially entered the transfer portal. And then secondly, the fit just might not be as great as we might think when you look at those stats.
Yeah, and there's a lot to hash out here, and the biggest thing is, what does West Virginia do and what do their players do? I think that's the first domino that has to fall, and then you can get a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper more into this conversation.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll take one more time out here on the program today, and when we come back, we start to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Make sure you check out Locked On's NBA Mock Draft Special. It's here, and it's way better than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. We've got all of our hosts from all 30 Locked On NBA teams participating. We're also taking a look with insight from the college experts as well. All episodes are available now on the Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Ball Durham. Kevin, I ask you this, talking about the NBA draft coming up on Thursday, what interests you most this time of year with Derek Lively II and Dariq Whitehead looking for their NBA homes?
Well, I think both prospects are really interesting in their own right. I mean, Derek Lively seems to be one of the fastest rising players up draft boards in this pre-draft process. Now, obviously, his struggles at Duke in the beginning of the year, they were documented. I mean, the calf strain really set him back. You really didn't see him round into form until that January, February timeline. And then obviously the game against North Carolina, 14 rebounds and 8 blocks, really saw him take off. And I've seen him as high as 10 in a couple of mock drafts that I've seen posted this week. So that would certainly be a incredible rise for him, and it's all due to his defensive abilities, his shot blocking capabilities. And teams are willing to say, okay, we can develop this guy offensively, but his versatility and basically able to guard 5 positions defensively and be your rim protector is too high of a value to pass up. So that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing on Thursday, is how high will Derek Lively be picked. And for Dariq Whitehead, again, I've said it on this podcast a lot. I was the captain of the Dariq Whitehead fan bus coming into this season, and things didn't shake out for him. The broken foot in August, we learn out at the end of the year, it didn't heal properly. He needed another surgery. The reports are that he will be ready to go for training camp, but what team is going to take the chance on him? You've seen him in mock drafts as high as the late teens. You've seen him as low as the bottom of the first round. I think Dariq Whitehead has all the skill in the world. You've seen, even with basically playing on one good foot at Duke, he still shot 43% from three-point range. That is an incredible trait for NBA teams. So I think Dariq Whitehead, where is he going to go? What team is going to take the risk on him? And I think it's going to be a good gamble. And how high does Derek Lively go after how fast he has skyrocketed up draft boards here from May into late June?
Yeah, last year we're following along the NBA draft. We know there's an outside chance that Paulo Banchero could be the number one pick overall. This time last year, you go 2 days away from the draft. A lot of people really still think it's going to be Jabari Smith out of Auburn that goes number one. And then all of a sudden, Paulo surges late, gets that top spot. We're following 5 total players for Duke and where they're going to end up on draft night. So just 2 guys to kind of keep up with here going into the season. Do want to give some love to our good friends at the Duke Basketball Roundup podcast, who once again had Jay Billis on prior to the draft. And Jay Billis, such a fixture on ESPN's draft coverage each and every year. He was asked specifically about Whitehead and being slotted at the 25 number before or after the 25th overall pick. And Jay Billis said, boy, that is pretty close to what he's hearing in terms of where Whitehead could end up. And Kevin, I think you're sort of echoing similar sentiments. Jay Billis feels like it's got to be after 25 likely, but I'd say in that 25 to 30 range is where he ultimately thought Whitehead could go. And I'd like to think Jay Billis knows a thing or two about draft coverage, considering all the years he sat on that desk.
Yeah, absolutely. And you feel like that would be the best situation for him as well. You want one of those quote unquote good teams, playoff caliber teams, to take him. And then he's not rushed into just being out there on the floor. He can properly recover from this second foot surgery. And if he's not ready for day 1 or day 2 of training camp, that he can still take his time and recover and make his season debut in December or January. I know that's probably not what he wants, but if it's the best case for his career long-term, then it's good to be on a team that, okay, you have stars up and down your roster where you don't need Dariq Whitehead to contribute on opening night to try and make your team exciting or competitive. And I think that would be the best case for him. And you're going to see that towards the bottom half of the first round, those type of teams.
Kevin, the reason you want to see 25 to 30 is because you don't want to fall into the second round. That financial bump alone, right, of being a first-round pick for Dariq Whitehead's pockets, who is going to make a lot of money throughout his professional career, it will get off to a better start if he can find one of those first-round draft slots as opposed to falling in the second round.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a big financial hit just from the 30th overall pick to the 31st. It's a sizable hit. So hopefully for him and his family and his bank account that he goes in the first round.
Kevin, it's always great to talk about these things with you. I'm certainly looking forward to following along your draft coverage over at the website. Give me one more plug once again for Ball Durham.
You can read us at balldurham.com, and then you can follow us on Twitter at ball_Durham.
Excellent. We'll talk again soon, Kevin, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's our pal Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Ball Durham, and he's joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Again, a dream scenario. What do you think about the fit potentially if Jesse Edwards were to go into the transfer portal? Should Duke pursue him? I kind of think it's a dream scenario if those stars would align with that 13th scholarship remaining. Let us know in the YouTube comments below. Send us your thoughts on Twitter as well at LO_Blue Devils. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.